What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to
interior and trouble-free automatics. Toyota Camry 6. Several generations of the Toyota Camry fit into the price specified by us. But the richest choice will be among cars in the body 1540, which were produced from January 2006 to October 2011. After 6 to 7 years of operation in Russia, and especially in both capitals, where there are a lot of not wild monkeys, but wild reagents. On the roads, it is too rash to expect a pristine samurai luster from the body. Though, despite the firm confidence of owners of the previous 1530 Camry that this generation is the end of all Toyota Camry, there can be no serious problems with rust. Sometimes everything can be limited to only localized pockets of corrosion, about which you can read here. As for the interior, there are noticeably more questions. Leather rock all do age cars radically lose their look, materials are rubbed off, pierced and cracked. But what is much worse, annoying crickets appear inside the car in its various corners, and it is not the most trivial task to overcome them. The front panel and the center console are especially passionate to disharmonious musical accompaniment. It is useless to fight with them alone. You will spend a lot of time, effort and nerves. It is better to trust professionals who will promptly restore acoustic comfort in the cabin for a humane sum. The motors, which were supposed 1540 in Russia, are mainly praised for their resource: 4-cylinder inline 2AZ, FE and 6-cylinder V-shaped. 2GR FE, as practice shows, go up to 350 to 400,000 without major interventions. But proper maintenance will have to pay maximum attention. And it is not only about regular oil change, but also about some other works and adjustments which will have to be carried out periodically. So, for example, the inline 4 has no hydrocompensators, so the thermal gap valves will have to adjust every 80 to 100,000 kilometers. And the throttle valve and the crankcase ventilation valve have to be cleaned even more often, every 40,000 to 50,000 miles. The timing chain drive of this motor is not all smooth, 150,000, and the hydraulic tensioner says hello. Often at about the same distance the phase regulator on the inlet, cooling system pump and generator pulley overrunning clutch leave the chat. There is a high probability that the injector seals will lose their tightness. Actually, the interval from 150 to 200,000 kilometers is probably the most expensive for the owner of Toyota Camry 1540 with this engine. Because of the oil rings lodging, oiling may occur. All sorts of engine oil leaks will loudly declare themselves, and to look for their sources is a fun. Nevertheless, this motor was once favored by the largest number of car buyers. Today, sedans equipped with it prevail in the secondary market in the ratio of about 1 to 3. Strangely enough, with V-shaped 6, problems are noticeably less. Especially on cars after restyling. In 2010, they cured the congenital disease with unreliable oil supply tube to the phaser regulators, which burst the plastic part, after which the engine very quickly lost all the oil. And in 2011, unreliable control valves of VVT system were massively updated. However, it was not possible to finally get rid of the crackling of the clutches of this system. Usually it appears when starting the engine, and since it does not affect the speed, as they say, irresponsible owners simply do not pay any attention to it. The 1540 has a much better situation with gearboxes. Row 2AZ FE is equipped with 5-speed manual or automatic boxes, V-shaped 2GR FE with 6-speed automatic transmission. All these units are quite reliable and rarely bother car owners. The only important condition is regular, every 40 to 50,000 kilometers, transmission fluid replacement. If it is observed, it is possible to forget about automatics up to 200,000 mileage at not too cruel manner of management. According to everything, it turns out that from the point of view of service and repair, the V-shaped 6 is more favorable than its 4-cylinder sister. However, there are few such cars on the secondary market, and their appetites are not serious. This motor is constantly reproached in too uneconomical fuel consumption. So, decent operational expenses with 6th Camry cannot be avoided in any case. Well, and besides, at intensive operation, automatic boxes in pair with V6 do not live long. Rotten, but very alive, Hyundai Sonata EF. Another Asian in the segment of D-Class sedans for 1 million is Hyundai Sonata of the 4th generation, EF. Of course, for this amount you can find cars in more recent generations, the 5th and even the 6th. But these are rather suspicious cars at the very bottom of the market, unambiguously with a huge mileage and, most likely, with a massive hidden problems. And here for Sonata 4 million rubles is directly what the doctor prescribed. Absolutely fair price, allowing better to look at newer restyled cars, produced from 2001 to 2012. They were assembled at the Russian Tag AZ. In fact, they should be oriented on them, as many nodes and systems of the car were modernized in the process of updating. Unfortunately, the Sonata EF was able to rot with particular enthusiasm both before and after the restyling. The reasons for this propensity to corrode almost any metal part, from the windshield frame to the underbody, can be numerous. From manufacturing defects to manipulations with raw materials, used metal and paint materials. Therefore, you will have to examine the metal structure of the sedan from top to bottom with a special zeal and a dozen eye friends. Most closely examine the lower part of the body, spars, welding places, hidden cavities. And don't be surprised if you don't find anything. 4th Sonatas in quite decent condition are also found on the market, especially in the south. If the owner treated it with respect, Vasya, regularly carried out hygienic and anti-corrosive procedures, the sedan can keep aesthetic vivacity of spirit without red marks and torn rusty holes till our days. The Sonata F's interior passes the test of time with great difficulty. Both cloth and leather trim give up relatively quickly. If the previous owners have not restored and updated it, the interior of 20-year-old cars with almost 100% guarantee will be a pitiful sight. Worn almost to holes, chairs, dirty trampled floors, shabby steering wheel are characteristic signs of the 4th Sonata. But plastic, despite of its visual unassumingness, copes with wear rather firmly. Moreover, it does not crack and does not squeak. Dust it with polish and it's almost as good as new. Chic, shiny, beautiful. After restyling on the 4th Sonata continued to put a 2-liter inline 4-cylinder engine G4JP and the previously used 2.5-liter V-shaped G6BV was replaced by a more powerful 172 horsepower G6BA of the same configuration, but with a volume of 2.7 liters. In 2006 it was time to change the 2-liter motor, which was replaced by a representative of a more modern family Beta 2 G4GC with an output of 137 horsepower. The sedan has never had a diesel engine. As many Sonato drivers report, this G4GC is almost the most ideal motor of all times and peoples. Its horses are enough for the car, and there are not so many problems with it. The latter can be thrown, for example, capricious ignition system, which requires high-quality plugs, ignition coils and high-voltage wires. It is better to buy them not in the original version, but from trustworthy manufacturers. Like the timing belt, which is desirable to change every 60,000 kilometers. The same frequency of replacement should be adhered to in respect of the timing belt of the more powerful G6BA. Unfortunately, it is impossible to give any guarantees on its service life only. On older cars, it can jump and tear earlier. So, if possible, try to monitor its condition. And take into account that on the intake camshafts there is a chain, which comes into disrepair and begins to make noise by 120 to 130,000 mileage. And the most unpleasant sore spot on the G6BA is popularly recognized as the bolts of the vortex flaps of the intake geometry change system. They live their own life and often unscrew by themselves, flying straight into the combustion chamber. Naturally, all this happens suddenly. G4JP does not suffer from such intricate ailments, but it looks rather mediocre against the background of its brethren. Something's always happening to it. Then the balance shaft bearing jams, then terrible vibrations suddenly shake. And the engine supports can also blow out. Every 50 to 60,000 you have to change hydrocompensators, wash idle speed regulator and throttle, fight with floating revolutions. Think something because of suddenly falling on your head or loggia. As you have surely realized, you will not be bored with this engine. All engines were equipped with either 4-speed automatic transmission or 5-speed automatic transmission. Despite the apparent simplicity of the task, the optimal choice is not obvious at all. praised reliability of mechanics used in the fourth Sonata, the box M5GF1 is not typical. This unit abounds with leaks, leading to a drop in oil level and, as a consequence, to accelerated wear of mating components. In addition, there are many claims to the hydraulic drive, flywheel, quickly dying synchronizers and shaft bearings. The weakest link in the automatic transmission is the needle bearing of the overdrive planetary series. Its damage leads to a chain reaction that destroys other components of the gearbox. Sensors of input and output revolutions are not notable for their vitality. Hydraulic block is very sensitive to purity of transmission fluid. In general, and the automatic transmission on Sonata EF can give a lot of reasons to think about. Although in general, if you manage to find a variant with not quite killed body and 2-liter G4GC, you can take it with any box, without thinking. It means you are unspeakably lucky and someone up there obviously favors you. Therefore, you should not refuse such gifts of fate. Don't get lost with the choice, Ford Mondeo 4. We cross the Pacific Ocean and face Ford Mondeo, the best sedan and liftback. Mondeo had both types of bodies of D-Class, according to some of the most enthusiastic automobile minds. However, one should always remember that Fordmania is only a little more stubborn than Toyotamania and very often needs the help of specialists. Therefore, we will write off this confidence on too bright susceptibility of some individuals and will not argue with them. In the context of the cost in question, it will definitely be the fourth-generation Mondeo, produced from 2007 to 2014. You can't buy fifth-generation sedans for that kind of money, and we'll talk about the earlier ones another time. You know, the Fordomans are not so far from the truth in this particular case. At least from the point of view of body reliability, it is difficult to find rust on the fourth Ford Mondeo even after so many years. Formed, let's say, naturally. And all because in the process of production the car was bathed in cataphoresis, penetrating into the most secret corners of the structure. So the only possible faulty are damages and various labor scuffs on joints of doors, under rubber bands of seals, in places of contact with plastic bumpers and mudguards and similar. Nothing terrible happens to the interior as well. Maximum natural wear and tear within reasonable limits with corresponding loss of marketable appearance. Leather, by the way, is not much more durable than rags, but when it wears out and cracks, it looks noticeably worse. The most grasping controls, steering wheel, gearbox lever knuckle, pictograms on buttons are wiped off decently. But all this, you will agree, is trifles. The only not a trifle is the seat belts, which are loosening with time. After all, threads and debris caught in the mechanism may eventually lead to their jamming. Engines for the fourth Mondeo were prepared a huge mountain and several small carts, starting from unknown for what reason invented. 120 horsepower 1.6 TVCT of Sigma line and finishing quite tolerable 2-liter TRVA at 240 horsepower. Although it is tolerable only by output parameters and in fact. Well, about it a little later. In general, on this generation of Ford Mondeo really mixed in a heap horses, people and volleys of 1,000 guns, diesel and gasoline. EcoBoosts, Duratex, and Zetec. And also 4 types of gearboxes, 5 and 6-speed manual boxes and 6-speed classic automatic and robot. And it is good that we have not officially imported 4-wheel drive cars. Otherwise it would be completely confused. So, the gasoline lineup. Younger 1.6-liter engines, as small children, like to whine with oil through crankshaft oil seals and crackle, no, not for both. Cheeks with TVCT clutches. That's about it. And because by the time of installation on the sedan, all their childish sore spots have already been eliminated. The 2.0 and 2.3-liter Duratec gasoline engines do not tolerate engine oil either. They like to absorb it, and even in such exotic ways as internal leaks into spark plug wells through the valve cover gasket. Gourmets, eh? Well, and, of course, they're a classic for the family low-resource ignition coils paired with a quickly dirty throttle. However, it is possible to put up with it, because against the background of resource of 1,300 to 350 kilometers these problems seem not the most burdensome. At 2.5-liter Duratec with marking Huber resource can be even more, up to 500,000 kilometers. Its disadvantages are almost all the same, but with a bonus in the form of a weak VKG system and snotty radiators. But in free flight it gives a terrific drive, and it is a pity that after restyling it was stopped to be put. And do you know what they replaced it with? Constant nervousness of unfinished EcoBoosts, which tortured car owners with regular detonation. In addition to these engines, it was necessary to give at once a diagnostic scanner and eternal subscription to firmware updates. Maybe, at least it will partially help those engines. Diesel Mondeos came to us with a greeting from France. They used well-known units developed by the hot minds of PSA engineers. By the time they appeared on the big sedan, they got rid of innate oddities and sin only the standard teeth-grinding diesel shenanigans. With the EGR and particulate filters, if any. Injection system components, such as fuel injectors and so on, if they are not tortured with rotten fuel, they last long. But if they leave our mortal world without possibility of restoration, choose what kidney you will sell to collect money for repair. They've also poured in a lot of boxes. The most surprising thing is that the mechanical 5-stage does not cope even with helpless 1.6-liter motor. The sedan, apparently, is too big for it. Therefore, from overexertion at this box the axis of satellites bursts, oil seals break through, primary shaft bearing is covered. And 6-speed manual box is ideal, you will not find a bad word about it. Why it was not put on all cars? Aisin automatic AWTF 81SC is very durable, only change transmission fluid, and nothing will happen to it until 200 to 250,000 mileage. Firm robots power shift are noticeably more capricious, and besides chronic problems with clutches they can suffer from leaks of front covers. Thus, the best choice of the fourth Mondeo is as follows, before restyling, with a 2.5-liter petrol engine and a 6-speed manual. Gearbox, after, a diesel engine with an automatic transmission. But such cars are valued at the weight of gold, which is not surprising, and you will have to look for them. Premium claim, Opel Insignia. We finish our transcontinental marathon on D-Class sedans in old Europe. And number 1 we have the Opel Insignia, produced from 2008 to 2017. But our million is enough only for its pre-styled version. Here we are not just talking about an inexplicably invented engine, as in the case of the Ford Mondeo, but about the whole inexplicably created car. Though it has fans, and someone even likes it. In principle, it is quite natural. Constructors and designers have really tried over it. And even swung on a premium level. But Opel irreversibly remained Opel. It can be seen even at the most cursory examination of a body. It looks like everything is good, lively and cheerful, but when you start to look closely, you immediately find all kinds of defects. Here the paintwork is chipped off, there it is blown. The picture for the first Insignias is widespread. Wheel arches, lower edges of doors and luggage compartment lids, sills, mating with bumpers, you will certainly find something in a couple 3, or even more places. Therefore, do not be lazy, bend down and scrutinize the body. It is the same story with the interior. Look inside, as if only from the factory. The leather is smooth, the cloth is tightened, the plastic is soft and rich. But picky inspection at once reveals operational wear and tear, frayed handle of a box, dented steering wheel, cracks on lateral support of seats. However, nothing especially critical, no component requires serious restoration or replacement. A light cosmetic touch-up is enough, and the interior will be like new again. Again, in an overconfident attempt at premium, the engineers of the concern stuffed the sedan with the whole arsenal of engines available at that time. The attempt, to put it bluntly, turned out to be unconvincing. Not only that they equipped the heavy car with low-power atmospheric engines A16H and A18H of identically woeful design with eternally flowing heat exchangers and frankly weak cooling system, but they also managed to create a supercharged unit A16LE from 1.6-liter engine, simply taping a turbine over it. It is not necessary to study cochromatism for decades to guess, at such loads it will crack at all seams. And it really cracks. Scuffs and cracks are its typical work routine. The 2-liter A20 NHT with all its improved versions, very conditionally improved, runs out of oil and beats your brain with sudden surprises like a connecting rod that suddenly broke off or a turbine that suddenly fell off. This is despite the fact that the plugs on it do not live more than 30,000 kilometers, and at about 100,000 if you are lucky, even earlier, you will have to change all the attachments together with the timing chain. The A28 Net and A28 NER are not so terrible, but they have a high tendency to overheating and a low resource timing chain, which is extremely expensive to replace. And they would be worthless then. 2-liter diesel engine of the first Insignia in all its configurations is Multijet 2, about which everybody knows everything well. In this modification, its Achilles heel is the pressure in the lubrication system, which is always insufficient. Experienced Opel drivers changed the oil pump reducing valve and equipped the system with a pressure indicator so that the motor would not run out quickly. It is necessary to keep an eye on it all the time. Only with the appearance of a modernized version of the diesel engine, which was put on cars with the Index 2.0 CDTI, the need for strict control disappeared. But it happened already on restyled sedans, which do not fit into our budget. And here with boxes pre-restyling cars were very lucky, they were supposed only 6-speed automatic transmission Aisin TF80SC in Opel version AF40, the only weakness of which is a small radiator. But in this case, additional heat exchangers have been invented. The mechanical 6-speed F40 is also good, but its sister M32 has literally made the whole world famous with its shaft bearings. They can start humming at very low mileage around 50 to 60,000 kilometers. Very soon the rear gearbox of all-wheel drive versions of the sedan joins this ensemble. Its wear occurs indecently fast, and even before 100,000 mileage it will certainly make noise. The most offensive thing is that it is a misfortune of pre-restyling cars in which the corner reducer is subject to constant oil leaks. So, if the eye fell on the first such Insignia, it is better still to look at mono-driven diesel cars. They are not tortured with repair and drive decently. Yes, you will have to look for them, but they are there. And not in single quantity. Only always remember that the claim for premium remains only an unrealized claim, and fuel equipment of old diesel can upset with the cost of sudden repair. Inside younger than outside, Volkswagen Passat B6, another German, and, unlike Opel, perceived by most Russian motorists as a full-fledged German, is the Volkswagen Passat. However, its generation B6, produced from 2005 to 2011 and best suited to our price criteria, makes us seriously question the true Germanness of this particular generation of the model. Alarm bells appear almost immediately because the quality of the car's bodywork is not even close to the established ideas about the notorious German quality. Here you can find a full set, shabby chrome, sagging hinges, failing door locks and many pockets of corrosion of different degree of harmfulness all around. This, of course, is not what is usually called rust bucket, but the vast majority of B6s sold today are already clearly halfway to the cherished goal. The only consolation, power elements of the structure, more or less successfully resisting all penetrating corrosion. But when you open the door, you suddenly find yourself in a car which is 10 or 15 years younger than its exterior. Its age partially gives away only a little worn pictograms on control buttons and noble wrinkles of leather trim of seats. Sometimes there are faded wooden panels, but they only strengthen the general entourage of good vintage, without creating an impression of worn out. The engine range is traditionally rich. But you can't name really successful variants right away, because you always have to compromise. Here, for example, in the gasoline range V-shaped 6-cylinder AXZ is a real bomb cannon. And its reliability is not bad. True, there are questions to crankcase ventilation, resource of coils and timing drive, but in general, nothing serious. However, calculation of fuel consumption immediately suggests the idea of immediate transition to a round-the-clock schedule of work, without weekends and holidays. Engines for 1.8 and 2 liters of EA888 family, constructively very similar, also drive perfectly and have such a virtue as modest fuel appetites. But they consume oil in absolutely indecent quantities. And their timing chain is as if made of rubber, it stretches at very low mileage. And then there's fouling, detonation, up to the destruction of the pistons. In general, it is not pleasant at all. The 2-liter turbo engines of the 113 family are too tricky. With them you should always be ready for an unpleasant surprise, and the assortment of these surprises is quite wide. But the atmospheric from the same family with a volume of 1.6 liters is a direct opposite to them. It is rather reliable and suffers only a small oiling, but dynamics with it is absolutely disgusting. as well as with 1.4-liter representative of EA111 lineup, which even an enemy will not wish because it seems to become the center of problems of all other families. It has a paper chain, and pistons crumble from detonation, and turbine is one continuous misunderstanding with unreliable vestgate and electronic valve. And the mileage of 200 to 250,000 for it is the point of fatal return. Diesel engines have their own story. Motors EA189 with common rail and EA188 with pump jets were very brave young men in their youth, but now their resource is almost completely exhausted. Do you want to invest in expensive repairs with no obvious results? It is entirely your choice. The same is the case with gearboxes. If you still chose reliability as your benchmark and you absolutely do not care how the car goes, take into account that the mechanical 5-stage gearbox paired with 1.6-liter atmospheric is extremely breakable. 6-speed manual transmission is much more reliable. And God save you from robots used on B6 DSG belong to the first series of such aggregates, therefore inborn sore spots in them are not counted. And if at wet DQ250 the main list of defects is limited by a miserable mechatronic, a miserable dual-mass flywheel and in general a small safety margin, then at dry DQ200 the clutch, which is aging at ridiculous mileages and forks of gear inclusion that cannot withstand loads, are added. Until 2013, the concern could not get rid of these troubles. And only hydromechanical ASIN causes minimum complaints, because the only thing it requires is regular replacement of transmission fluid and control of the state of the heat exchanger. Because this automatic transmission does not like overheating. That is, it is the box, in all likelihood, should be the starting point for selecting the most suitable configuration of Volkswagen Passat B6. On it and pick up the engine. And do not spare time to search for copies with a really well-preserved body, carefully cutting off the cosmetic tinsel. Good cars are still preserved in the reliable hands of caring owners. This list of models does not claim to be exhaustive. But there is no sense to add other cars to it, because they will be either like Skoda Superb with Passat B6, a little bit different interpretations of the above-mentioned sedans, or something like Citroën C5, stunning exotics, which it is not clear how to approach and where to look for it. Or have we forgotten something really interesting after all? In conclusion, selecting a D-Class sedan with a budget of 1 million rubles opens up a world of options that blend luxury and practicality. With careful consideration of mileage, features, and overall quality, you can find a vehicle that not only meets your needs but also offers a taste of premium comfort and performance. Whether you prioritize fuel efficiency, advanced technology, or a refined driving experience, the right choice can elevate your daily commute and provide lasting satisfaction. Remember to test drive and research thoroughly to ensure your investment truly reflects the imperial quality you desire. Thank you for watching and happy car hunting.